You're listening to Ink Tank by Movable Ink, designed to help digital marketing leaders excel in today's ever-changing environment. I'm Naveen, Associate Director of Client Strategy for Media and Technology at Movable Ink.
And I'm Julio Lopez, Director of Client Strategy for Retail at Movable Ink.
Customer acquisition and retention is always top of mind for digital marketers, and it's especially important for subscription-based services in the midst of COVID-19. On today's episode, we'll take a look at the unique challenges and opportunities subscription-based services have when it comes to acquiring customers, optimizing their lifetime value, and reducing churn. So Julio, thank you so much for joining us on today's Ink Tank. I think we're all well aware that subscription-based services are really commonplace in both media and technology and retail. So as I was doing research around this episode of Ink Tank, I thought it'd be really interesting to see if we had some shared learnings across both verticals.
Well, first, thanks for having me. I think it's very strange that we don't get to see each other daily in the office. And I'm very much so looking forward to our lunches again. But I am glad that we're able to collaborate on this sort of content together. So again, I'm very happy to be here. Speaking of, how have you been managing the quarantine?
So I've really been indulging in binge watching. I've never been more thankful for content like Tiger King or 90 Days Fiancé, 90 Day Fiancé before the 90 days. Don't judge me on that. But I actually just broke my rule of no TV in the bedroom. So I set up our spare TV in the bedroom, really pivoting rooms in our small Manhattan apartment. But I can highly recommend. It feels like we have a new room.
That's amazing. Definitely no judgment. I think we're all relying on that type of content to get us through. I myself have definitely signed up for many new streaming services so that I can access all of these interesting shows. And the increased screen time is definitely keeping me sane. So I'm wondering, from your world, what trends are you seeing?
So media and technology companies are really meeting a need right now. As people shelter in place in their homes, they're looking to media and technology to help them adjust and adapt to these new realities. So whilst there's definitely been an undeniable impact to the global economy, what we're actually seeing is an accelerated growth for media and tech subscription services. I'm actually going to share some stats that are really interesting from a study that Zora carried out that really brings to light the rate of that accelerated growth. They noted that streaming services growth increased by 7 times in the month of March, 3 times for digital media and news services, and 1.4 times for communication software. And that makes sense. In streaming, customers are really looking to distract and occupy time. Netflix just announced their strongest quarter in history, adding 16 million subscribers. That's double their pre-COVID predictions. But all of that unexpected growth came in the month of March, really solidifying that as people sheltered in place, their behaviors dramatically shifted, and media and technology companies are able to cater to these new needs.
Well, I'm glad to hear that I'm not the only one that's helping to drive Netflix's stock up. But personally, it's not just video streaming that I'm leveraging to distract myself during this time. I've also been reading up a lot on current news to make sure that I'm up to date on everything that's going on. So I would assume that that's the case for many of us.
Yeah, completely. For news publishers, there was an increased demand for credible, up-to-date information. Bloomberg, for example, noted that their daily subscriber count increased by 4 times their previous record, really, again, solidifying that demand. Information really changes by the hour, and as we learn more, it's important to stay informed. And for technology organizations, they're fulfilling a need to stay connected as we all socially distance. So that comes in 2 forms. The first really is to keep workforces connected and facilitate business as usual, regardless of where customers are. And then secondly, more so on a personal level, keeping people connected and facilitating social interaction and human connection. So we're quite literally bridging distance with technology here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's safe to say that overall, the quarantine has increased demands to distract and occupy time. It makes sense that media and technology has seen such a dramatic uptick. Consumers are looking at different ways to deal with the current situation. And from my point of view as a retail strategist, notice that consumers are increasing their spending on items that fit this new paradigm. Things like home decor, like plant delivery services, and also clothing for comfort. So we're seeing an uptick in certain sectors of retail.
That word comfort there is really interesting because we're seeing that word used in the music industry as well. Organizations are really leaning into music as a form of comfort. It's that relatable constant that you can rely on and seek safety in. Speaking of retail, what unique challenges are you seeing in the industry?
So, media is now extremely necessary when it wasn't as necessary before. And on the retail front, necessary is also being redefined. So, for example, beauty products are sort of habitual and something almost matter of fact that you put on before heading out of your home. But now, beauty products have become a way for consumers to feel in control. Self care has now taken on a new higher priority. It allows individuals to try something new or to have a sense of control with a new beauty routine. And that's what's making it more of a necessity. And apparel, on the other hand, is taking a bit of a hit because we have nowhere to go. In either case, though, it now becomes a matter of how do these companies respond to shifting consumer needs?
So, how are you seeing companies shift their responses so that they address and adapt to these new needs? For example, I'm an apparel subscription customer, but I no longer have a need for a really full polished work uniform and that extended wardrobe that I once got from that subscription service. So, I'm probably going to be a customer that's likely to churn now. How would you retain me?
What we're seeing is that the types of products that are being surfaced are changing. So, for apparel, especially in subscriptions, brands are focusing on communicating value. So, we're seeing them rework the bundles so that it's not just things like workwear, but showcasing products that can be used at home. And this really applies to all subscription services in that brands are making sure to highlight the new reality. For example, in home decor subscriptions, we're seeing brands remind the consumer that it's about making the shelter in place experience a bit better. And again, highlighting products that make sense for the now.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is it's about adapting the product offering. And that's also what we're seeing as an effective strategy for media and entertainment orgs. One of the benefits of subscription based services is that they have the flexibility to adapt and adjust price plans and bundles based on consumer needs. Actually, a really great example of that is Sling TV. Initially, when the pandemic first broke, there was definitely a demand for up to date news information. So they offered, as a matter of goodwill, free access to a new tier that opened up live ABC News programming along with on demand content. But since then, we've seen the demand for news decrease beyond below the peak that we initially saw in March. And instead, or kind of in place with that, a demand for entertainment rise in the evenings as customers really look to distract and occupy time. So again, adapting to that changing need and those behaviors, they're now offering free access to their Blue package. And that offers several different entertainment channels to, again, distract and occupy time. But what's most unique here is that they're offering that Blue package for free during prime time when customers really need it the most. So what's really successful here is that they're keeping those customers' shifting needs top of mind, and they're tailoring their offering to those changing needs. So all of this is being provided as added value as well, really in a time that customers need those services. So with that, they're building trust and loyalty with a broader audience for the longer term.
I love that example of adapting. It really encapsulates the fact that brands like Sling TV truly understand the new reality. And I find it so interesting because this strategy is about adapting to meet increased demand. But in retail, we're not necessarily seeing that across the board. There are still ways to adapt. So, for example, retailers are starting to showcase the pause feature as an option on their subscription services in order to curb cancellations. So while it's not an adjustment to the bundle like we were discussing before, it is a good starting point. The next step can be what we discussed earlier around what should now be included in the subscription.
So, what's interesting about us talking about adapting at the moment is that we're definitely having to do it quickly to address the pandemic and the changing situation right now. But we're also going to have to continue to do this as the pandemic evolves. But we're also going to see a large shift again when the pandemic's over, because we're going to see behaviors shift in a big way when everyone can start going outside again. In the streaming industry, we're already hearing from providers like Netflix to expect a softer Q2. That rate of accelerated growth isn't going to continue. So focus really needs to shift from acquisition to retaining subscribers and growing their lifetime value.
Absolutely. I think that once we can be outside, we're going to take full advantage of that time, and that will result in softer performance numbers for media. Because of that, media will need to go on the retention offensive and find ways to communicate ongoing value. On the retail side, we're going to have the opposite situation, where the new normal will mean lower in store traffic and more subscription adoption to reduce face to face interaction. So for retail, we'll be focused on acquisitions because consumers will have their pick of the litter when it comes to subscription services. To win those customers over, we'll need to communicate a clear value proposition.
I'm in total agreement about demonstrating a clear value prop there. One of the challenges that's prominent for media and entertainment subscription services, and I'm sure this applies to retail too, is that customers are often acquired through free trials or offers, or they're just lured in with the fact that subscriptions are non committal monthly subscriptions, really, that they can easily cancel. The result being we have a market where consumers are really primed to switch from service to service, abuse those free trials, and also drift in and out of subscriptions based on content availability or their immediate needs.
Oh, totally. We're all guilty of signing up for a streaming service and binge watching and then canceling. That's why it's particularly important that subscription service brands, such as those in streaming, but also in retail, focus on driving engagement and in turn loyalty. Subscribers see value in the product and then are more likely to be retained and grow in LTV.
Absolutely. And it's our job as marketers to show customers the value of their loyalty. And that can be done by highlighting switching costs. And I'm not talking about money here, but rather all the non-tangibles that come with your subscription service. So, for example, your preference data, any tracked behaviors, all the algorithms that surface relevant content to you to help you discover new things that you'd want to watch. Or it could just be as simple as learning how to use a new interface. You've invested time in learning a service, and they've invested time in getting to know you. Switching means that you lose all that wealth of data and you have to start again.
You've totally hit the nail on the head with the concept of switching costs. And it applies to retail too, say in apparel. I know what size and what brand fits me best. And if I have to start the learning process all over, it's another task that takes time for me enjoying this new subscription service.
So true, I totally agree there. So, how do you communicate that to subscribers? Or rather, how are you communicating that value without being too overt?
When I work with loyalty managers, what we talk about is that there's two types of loyalty: transactional and emotional. And I think in order to showcase value, you need to pull both types of content into your message. For example, product recommendations in retail and content recommendations in media showcase that you know the customer, which is in line with transactional loyalty. Similarly, more relationship driven content, like how many different times you purchase an item, or maybe a reminder of a movie that you like to watch around the holidays, both showcase the strength of the relationship and drive on that emotional loyalty pillar.
That's so true. And delivering one to one recommendations or that transactional loyalty in real time is really important, especially as customer behaviors are adjusting so rapidly in response to this pandemic. We're in this constant state of flux. Everything's changing at the moment. And to remain relevant, recommendations really need to change at the rate that our behaviors are changing.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
Another thing to consider is personalizing based on context to drive value. So, drawing on data points that are outside of behavior or demographics and really factoring in environmental cues. So, recognizing, for example, the time of day to day part content recommendation so that they're really as relevant as possible at the moment that a customer engages. So, in streaming, for example, if a subscriber engages in the morning, you could offer them news content to really start their day on an informed basis. But in the evening, when we know that their behaviors really shift and they're looking for an escape, you could change that content in real time to binge worthy content so that it's most relevant to their needs at that point in time.
That is such a great idea. And I hadn't thought about this before, but you could even apply that contextual targeting slash day parting to products that you recommend on retail. So, for example, in the morning, you can showcase plushy robes to wear around the house, which you've seen me wear in our internal meetings. Or in the evening, it could be pajamas for a great night's sleep. Really leaning into that contextual targeting idea, definitely stealing that from you.
I love that. And I love that there's no day wear example in that. It literally just goes from loungewear to loungewear.
I am just giving into the new reality and living my best loungewear life, with the exception of today. Another thought that comes to mind is that since we have all this new data and insight with new behaviors being exhibited by our current customers, I wonder if there's an opportunity to take the learnings and apply them to new subscribers. I guess what I'm thinking is, what are the successful ways companies can reach new subscribers? On the retail side, we know that trials are extremely successful in driving conversion. So, surfacing items that consumers are using more now because of this new reality can inform the items we highlight to prospects to drive subscription enrollment. So, really tailoring the content based on the needs of our current reality could be the winning formula.
Yeah, and just building on tailoring content, we could also tailor the entire experience. For example, in the news publishing space, we've seen paywalls drop for on demand content, specifically around COVID-19 content. But not only that, there's also new marketing strategies that are being adopted, like dedicated newsletters that have been stood up to drive engagement, again, as a value add. But these aren't being implemented as overt conversion tactics, but rather the initial implementation really is a gesture of goodwill, a means of public service to keep the public informed. But what that really does is build trust with your consumers. And once you develop that engagement and you've proven value of your service, it's far easier to convert subscribers. On the retail side, are you seeing any added value tactics like that at the moment?
Yeah, what we're seeing is similar to streaming in that it's all about innovation and how we adapt subscription programs to really showcase value. And some of the ways have included giving more access, similar to what you just mentioned in media, but in retail's case, more access to more product. That can be an additional item in your monthly box, or even an additional opportunity to request more product if you're part of a clothing rental service. Those are the main things that we've seen so far.
So I think the short of it is, regardless of your vertical, now is the time to really make your subscribers' investment count and making the value of their subscription really shine. Well, that's about all the time we have for today's episode. Thank you so much for joining us, and be sure to subscribe to Ink Tank so you don't miss upcoming episodes.